What's up? Hey, today we're going to go talk about Meshtastic, and I have my backpack because, well, we're going to talk about the T1000. Maybe you're looking for a Meshtastic device that's ready to go, meaning you don't want to build things and pick out batteries and GPS. Although I find that fun, a lot of people don't, and they just want a ready-to-go unit. Today we're going to take a look at the SenseCAP T1000. Now, the SenseCAP T1000 is being held onto my Molly gear by a 3D printed mount made by EliCat, which is available on printables, and I'll link it below. And I think that it does kind of show how nice and convenient this little device can be. After all, it's the size of a credit card. It uses magnetic mounts for charging, and also we see this nice clear protective case, which means it has an IP rating of about IP65, meaning you can go places with it in a music festival and not necessarily worry about rain. Maybe it gets a little bit wet, you're not going to be completely concerned, whereas if you make your own case, it might not be the best thing for you. But the fact of the matter is, if this doesn't work well, why would you want to buy it? And that's where I was really impressed, and that's why we're going to take a little bit of a drive today. Here at my house I have a Station G2 with an antenna that's 10 dBi, and it's indoors. While we drive, let's go ahead and put this SenseCAP back on this cool Molly gear mount and just start going. Oh, my bad, I forgot to do a baseline test here to see how well this performs at the house with the G2. So let's go ahead and just check that out real quick. Now, every Meshtastic device is going to be able to hook up to the Meshtastic app. This T1000 is no different, and because it doesn't have a built-in screen or keyboard, we're going to use the app, which doesn't require internet connection, GPS connection. It does require Bluetooth connection, however. And here in the app, we can see that I've named my connection BBB, and I'm just taking a look now, and it looks like I'm starting to see multiple stations direct or through multiple hops. In particular, today I see from my house Dude's G10 with a signal noise ratio of plus 10 dB, which is phenomenal, and a RSSI of negative 44 dBm. That means that the signal is good, and we're going to continue on. Now, pardon the noise back there, but people will wonder, what is Meshtastic and why is it so cool? And the fact that you could have off-grid communications that have the ability to be either unencrypted or mainly encrypted, it's a great resource. You don't need to be an amateur radio operator to use them. And I think that it fills a void when you go to a large event like a concert. And that's why we're going to this first spot today, which is about 500 yards from my house. And I think I'll be able to communicate with it. However, it's important for me to check this because this was one of the spots that typically have music festivals in the summertime, and I would like to be able to make sure that I could use my Meshtastic device anywhere at this park. Well, the nice thing about this park is it's very open, right? So there's no trees, and that's an important thing. It's almost a clear line of sight to the house as well. And the reason that's so important is because 900 megahertz is a near line of sight. They call it a line of sight technology, and that is the truth, but in all reality you can call it near line of sight, which means that the more trees and the more shrubbery and obstructions that are in the way, it doesn't work as well. A couple of more things. Number one, I will have to reconduct these tests in about a month or so when the leaves start to grow in, and that is going to degrade the signal. However, you might overcome that by getting a little bit higher so you're over the trees. But if I'm at a music festival, for example, and a critical incident starts to occur, am I going to want to get to a high point where I'm very visible, or am I going to want to stay low with cover and concealment while getting myself and others to safety? So I think that these tests I'm conducting, at least for my idea of how it will work, would be efficient and effective today. So let's go ahead now and just take a look at Dude's Station G2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Trace Route, and I'm going to click Trace Route again, and now it's going to respond back and it's going to say, hey, you have a negative 4.75 dB signal to your station at home. And then the station at home has responded to you with a positive 6.5 dB signal. So that's a better antenna. It's got a little bit more power. That's a better unit over there. And it's probably helping out that it's just a tad bit higher as well. But regardless, I still have a good signal to and from my home station at this park. And that's very, very important. Another thing you can do is if you were to put this into lost and found mode, it's really convenient because you could put this on a dog harness. For example, my harness for my dog is a tactical dog harness. And that means I could use this same print from EliCat and I could just clip it on my dog. And I know that there are some other people making cool little dog harnesses and clips for the T1000, but this one was free. Now, I mentioned that was only about 500 yards. We're going to take it a little bit further now, and as the crow flies, we're going to be around 1.3 miles away on our next stop at the post office, mainly because I have to drop off a package for Jerry. All right, we're at a stoplight, so I figured I'd try to do a stop or a trace route again. And the thing about it is I'm in a more urban area now at a lower point of the town with a heavy tree line around me. So there's buildings behind me here, and I just don't think we'll make this message, but I think it's very important to kind of, oh, there it is, -7 dB, and the response from Dudes G2 was a positive 2 dB. So we still have a good signal even in this urban environment, a little bit lower to the ground. I'll leave the elevations below, and we're gonna make it to the post office now, which will be at a higher vantage point. So again, 4 minutes ago, I pinged Dudes G2 from that low spot in town, and we still had a decent signal. Now the bag is still next to me, and I'm gonna hit trace route. And it's taking a while to respond because now it might be a little bit more difficult. And now what it ended up happening was it looks like it went through a different node to get there, FFFF. I do have a node called FFF, but that can't be it. Let me try that again. I did move the bag slightly up, and basically what we're going to do one more time now that we're here at the post office is we're going to try to ping Dudes G2, but I've made another observation, and I'll tell you what I think is happening in just a second. Let's go ahead and click on Dudes G2 and click trace route, and it might take a minute. The further out we get, the longer the response time might be. And now we might start seeing this going through other nodes as well. Here we see a direct connection to Dudes G2, BBB, -13.5 dB to the G2, and back it's 1.5 dB. So what I'm saying is Dudes G2 actually has decent signal around most of the town so far. And of course, we have a smaller device here that doesn't have a 10 dBi gain antenna, but we're still making contact to home. And I think that that's the most important thing as of right now. It still shows on the app that our signal is good. And then more importantly, it looks like there's another unit 19.5 kilometers away, and it shows -8.25 dB. So now I'm starting to see other units that I could talk directly to if I need to. Of course, we have a whole list here of other stations that maybe I can talk to indirectly, you know, through hopping from station to station and relaying messages. Everybody's going to have a different use case. I think I've already said that, but I really want to re-stress that point that maybe because I point out things and I think that they're neat, doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be the best thing for you. You know, you really need to know your use case for these Meshtastic units. Are you going to be playing airsoft? Do you want something that can withstand some water? Do you need a bigger antenna? For example, I like to use the Station G2 at home because it has a little bit more power, and I have it hooked up to a larger 10 dBi gain antenna. And that seems to do well for me around town. The bag is in the same position as it was. It's not moving. And we're now a little bit further away on the other side of town. So I would probably say we're about 1.5 miles as the crow flies. However, now we're going through denser trees. There's trees right in front of me. There's trees all the way to my Station G2. And we're just going to jump on here and we're going to take a look and see if we could ping it again and what the signal looks like. Now, I don't think that we're going to hit it this far out, but it would be nice to know if we did. Let's go ahead and find Dudes G2. There it is. 8 minutes ago is the last time we did the trace route, and we're going to try it one more time here. If it doesn't find a route directly, it should find a route through somebody else. And that's fine. I would prefer it to be direct, but there becomes a point where it notices that the signal is strong enough to hop from another station or to another station and work better or just as well. And unfortunately right now, I'm not seeing Dude's G2 pop up on that trace route. We might try just one more time. And as a last case scenario, maybe we drive just a little bit around to get away from this tree line. I think it's a good demonstration though that it's not always going to work for you. All right, I'm gonna go grab breakfast, but while I grab it, I'm gonna slide this out. And one of the things I really love about this, if I don't drop it right here, I got it, I swear I got it, is it does fit right in this pocket as well, which makes it very convenient yet again.
Okay, I'm inside of the restaurant now, and still have the unit in my pocket. However, I noticed that it actually did see my G2 station just a moment ago, so let's try one more time and do a trace route to it. To be completely fair, I was surprised that it even saw it inside this brick building.
My breakfast was good. I had an omelet, just so you know. We're gonna take this and we're gonna go home and upgrade the firmware on it, okay? So that power charging cable also is responsible for passing data and our firmware upgrade. After we upgrade the firmware, let's go ahead and send a message or two so you could hear the speaker. There's a loudspeaker in here that you could disable in the firmware. Anytime you get a message, all of a sudden this thing is going crazy and it beeps, 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 and you hit this button to acknowledge it and turn off the beeping essentially. And then we're going to throw this in the air a couple times and see how durable it is, as well as we'll spray it with water just to make sure that it is actually IP65 rated, which means that it should have jet protection from any side, any angle. Basically, it should be able to withstand a rainstorm. Well, it's the next day. I got myself an oatmeal. I like food, all right? But what it comes down to is the firmware flashing was super easy. You plug in your device. Mine automatically detected the drivers, but that is because I think I already had drivers installed from another Meshtastic device. Went to the flasher website for Meshtastic, and I just auto-detected the device as well as re-flashed or upgraded the device. It took all of 3 minutes, and now I have the latest firmware. Also then if I go over to client.meshtastic.org, I'm able to do things like enable that beeping setting and so forth. But this isn't a tutorial on how to configure everything. And it is raining, so let's have some fun. All right, I just was going a little bit fast and I threw it out the window or dropped it out the window. Now we gotta go find it. So what we're doing here, hope we don't roll it over. Let's just get out of the vehicle real quick. I gotta tell you, this thing is very difficult to see, but yeah, here it is. So it still is broadcasting, which is pretty cool. Dave, KB5UTY, he was the one who sent me this device, and I told him I was working on an angle, but I wasn't quite there. He told me just do it the way you do things. And so I wasn't satisfied with me throwing this out the window just a little bit and it getting just a little bit of a nick. So we're here at the car wash. And I figure if this thing could survive the blast from a car wash hose, we're doing all right. Let's go see if we can't get this thing wet. Well, let's see if it still works. What are my initial observations now? Internally, it doesn't look like it's too wet. I will say that the magnets that are on the charging port did pick up some it's probably like black sand, if you will. But that's all clean now. And I'm just gonna wipe this down. See if it does anything. Uh-oh. Let's see if we can connect to it with Bluetooth. Internally, it looks fine. Oh no, there is a little bit of water in there. As you can see right there. Now, if you're unaware, there still is a little bit of water in there. It's been about 10 minutes since I drove home. And I was thinking about it. I can't really fault SenseCAP for that, since I did throw it out of the car. And you start to tell yourself, well, that probably is going to maybe crack the case slightly here. But what we have the charger. And I just heard Windows identify, so I'm going to turn this on. And it still works just fine. To be safe, I'll make sure that I could send a message to this and from this. I'm able to log into it. It seems to be working okay. And we're good. Now what I will do is I'll go ahead and I'm going to shut this off. And I'm going to leave it off and let it dry overnight. All right, last night I was thinking about this just a little bit. And the thought process came into mind that, yeah, I plugged it in, it was charging up. I could send a message to the station G2, which was literally like 5 feet away. But what good is that if the overall integrity of the signal strength is compromised now? Now, don't get me wrong, if I needed to send a message in that time, maybe it would work well. But what about the overall reliability? So we're going to go to the post office for our final test, and we're going to make sure that we could still transmit and receive a trace route with the same or nearly the same integrity as before. Of course, since it snowed last night, the signal quality might degrade or even increase just slightly. So let's go find out right now. And this morning, by the way, the water is gone. I did it once, but I want to do it again. So Dude's G2 from the post office, it just gave me a signal noise ratio of 0.25 dB with the RSSI of minus 105 dBm. But I remembered that the other day I had this kind of on the seat next to me. So that's where it is again as we rerun this test one more time. But overall, I would say, there it is, immediately, negative 12.5 dB from this station to the home station, and then the route back is a plus 2.5 dB. And I think where I'm going with this is it shows the signal is still good. Therefore, my conclusion is, although some water did get internal and it can cause damage, it's still functioning as it should. I just didn't have it completely charged up. Now, to conclude things, I want to also mention, this was never a tutorial about how to use the device, and this wasn't a tutorial to talk about the 700 milliamp hour battery or the maximum output power, but what I will do for you is I'll post a GitHub link below that has information on all the different Meshtastic devices that are currently available, and it's almost like a comparison chart between them. But this has a very unique use case, and depending on what your use case is, it might be a good object or idea or product for you to acquire. I mean, for about 40 US, you get a credit card sized Meshtastic device that has waterproof capabilities. It looks pretty inconspicuous. Even if I were to leave it in my car, I don't think I'd be too scared that somebody would take it. It can fit into a fatter wallet. I mean, that's pretty thin. And overall, I would say that the signal range that I got with this in the terrain that I am at was pretty decent, and I'm satisfied with it. So depending on your use case scenario, how many times will I have to say that? But anyway, I hope you have a good one. Thanks for watching this episode, and if you could, do me a favor, if you like this, hit the like button, share this out with some friends, and maybe subscribe. 73.